So here we are, Rocky Mountain Metro Airport. It's about 8 o'clock over here local time. So sun's already down, it's already the night. What we're going to do is just kind of set everything up. And I said I wanted to go to Centennial Airport, and that's not too far away. So what I'm going to do is just kind of set up the GPS. And you guys can actually see that in the bottom right hand corner. So I'm going to do something pretty easy. Choose nearest airport. Scroll all the way down until I see Centennial. Where is Centennial? There it is. KAPA. We're just gonna go. We'll direct right now. And then what we can do is see if we can just set up an instrument approach procedure. Yep, comes right up. Let's do an ILS 35 right. I have no idea what the winds are, and honestly, I couldn't care less. Alright, so if we look at our flight plan, we're going direct to XB, and then we're basically inbound. So what does that look like on the map? Zoom out a little bit. You can see on the bottom right, it's not very clear, but for the most part, we're going to be following that purple line. And on my HSI in the upper left-hand corner, I'm going to actually set a heading bug. It's a little blue thing that's popping up. And we're going to actually set it for 153 because that's direct. And we could actually even do this by traditional instrument, which I might want to do. Only thing is that it really doesn't let me do that from the hardware, so I got to do that manually inside the aircraft. But from there, it's pretty easy. We can just rotate this green course. And I know I really want to go 147. That's going to be the Victor Airway. That's local. One thing I'm also going to want to do is actually track this flight. Flight Events is actually a really good flight tracker, and so it just links up with my iPad, kind of spoofs the location. So on my iPad, I can actually see where I am, where I'm going, as if I was actually in the aircraft. So that's kind of cool. It's kind of fun. All right. Now, before we take off, we can do some fun stuff. We can just check the systems. Um, get this yoke out of the way so you guys can see it. Alright, so we're already on the runway, but, you know, whatever. I'm not going to taxi. There's your throttle response, and really, I can go full throttle. And all I want to do is just be able to lean the mixture. Mixture's this little red knob down here. I can just pull it back, and you can start to see the tachometer. It's going to start to rise just little by little. And we're just looking for max RPM, so wherever it drops, we're going to put the mixture back in. And this is really just leaning for altitude. The less air, the less fuel we need. Getting about an extra 100 RPMs up there. And like I said earlier, I'm a flight instructor. I do this for a living. I teach people how to fly every day. And this is just something I decided to do because I feel like if you guys learn something and you're interested in aviation, you could actually pick up a few things without having to pay someone like me $50 an hour to learn, especially inside the aircraft, which is much higher. Cessna like this locally will probably run you about 135 to 150 an hour. So it's a really expensive classroom if you think about it. But full power, mixture set. So what I'm going to do, that looks good. All systems are good because it's a computer. But our vacuum's in the green, our oil pressure's in the green, our oil temperature's a bit high, but it's in the green. And what's going to happen in a video game, right? In real life, I probably wouldn't like my temperature that high. Uh, our tanks are half full. We got full fuel flow because, well, I'm full throttle right now, max RPMs. Airspeed is 0. Attitude indicator is within 5 degrees bank. Our altimeter is a bit off. That's not the elevation of Rocky Mountain. It's about 5,600. So we're just going to set that to the proper altimeter setting. And typically you just kind of tune into the weather station at the airport, the ATIS, and they'll tell you the altimeter. You can manually do it, but I just have it set to automatically set. Our turn coordinator is active, no red flag, and our heading indicator looks appropriate. We got the heading bug on our en route heading. I'm just going to change that to 147 because that's going to be our course outbound. I'm going to connect to the connect to Jeffco VOR. That's 15.4. So in the bottom right hand corner of my GPS, I'm just switching the frequency, and that'll allow me to kind of tune into it. So on my HSI, there's a green line that now pops up, and I'm just going to follow that. Essentially, I'm following two things: this GPS heading, this pink line on my GPS, and also the green line on my HSI, my heading indicator. As for the rest of it, GPS is set. I'm not going to bother with the frequencies. I mean, it looks like we're tuned into Rocky Mountain Metro Tower, and I can actually set departure frequency, which is, for the most part, it might be this one. Not that I'm going to contact them. I'm not really going to talk to tower or departure. I'm just going to fly because in Microsoft Flight Simulator, it's not really it's not the most accurate. So I'm not going to worry about it too much. We can see that we have a second GPS. This is kind of redundant. I wouldn't really put this in an aircraft. I don't think anybody would, but you know, for the fun of it, let's do it. Down here we got our autopilot and our transponder. Our transponder is squawking altitude 1200 VFR, and our flaps are 10 degrees. So we'll use that for now. My parking brake is set. I'm just going to pull the power back until I'm ready for takeoff. And yeah, seems like everything's set. All I got to do is release the parking brake, go full throttle, and we'll be on our way. Now, it's fun to fly from inside the cockpit. I prefer it, but what we're gonna do is just kind of fly for fun. So I'm gonna hop out of the aircraft. I can basically manage it from outside with these two instruments. The PFD, which is on the bottom left, that's gonna give me my airspeed, my altitude, uh, and my attitude indicator. It'll also give me turn coordinator, and with the HSI on the bottom, I have my heading and my VOR. So basically set to take off. All I have to do is set it to full throttle. You can actually you can't really see my engine instruments, but I'm gonna bring my throttle to full. I'm gonna release that parking brake, and this aircraft's gonna start to move. I have my landing light on, my beacon on, my nav on. I'm gonna put on my strobes, and away we go. Now, I haven't bought rudders yet, so the only thing that's going to be tricky is not being able to maintain some sort of rudder control, but I have auto rudder right now on Microsoft Flight Simulator, and it kind of helps. So here we're just going down the runway. Right now I'm just going to be waiting for airspeed to come alive, which it is. You can see on the PFD the speed's increasing at 55 knots. We'll just lift up, and I'm really only going to lift up to about 10 degrees. You really don't need more than that. Alright, we got positive rate of climb. You want to climb between about 65, 75 knots, and that's kind of what I'm doing. Again, it's a lot harder to fly on a simulator because you don't really have that real feel, but here I'm going to do my best to just kind of monitor my instruments and make sure I'm flying properly. So good takeoff. We're no more runway remaining, clear of obstacles. We're going to pick up those flaps. That's going to kind of reduce my lift, so you'll see my airspeed pick up because my nose drops a bit. We're going to kind of compensate for that by picking that nose right back up almost to 10 degrees, and you'll see that airspeed starts to slow down. Really looking for 65 knots. Now that we're about 400 feet above the ground, we're just going to turn on course, and I'm going to try and intercept this green line that I have on my HSI. So I'm not going to immediately just turn to 147 degrees. I'm actually going to give about a 20-degree intercept, mainly because we're really close and I don't need that large of an intercept, and we're just going to climb to about 9,000. That's typically the minimum altitude for the instrument approach we're going to be doing into Centennial Airport. So I'm holding about 170. My airspeed got a little bit low. All I got to do is kind of relax the nose, lower the nose. And the easy part about flying is that once you figure out how trim works, it makes it so much easier. Trim is just a secondary control that we have that alleviates the pressure on the control stick or yoke, whatever you got. And from here, I typically will just kind of kick on autopilot. The thing is, we got to set up autopilot, so I really have to choose an altitude, and if I'm going to choose 9,000, I really have to go all the way up to 9,000. And we don't want to choose a vertical speed at which to climb. We really want to let it climb at a specific airspeed. So what we're going to try and do is just have it climb at 65. So I'm going to just press autopilot. Maybe before I set my autopilot, set my heading that I want to keep for now. So I'm going to go autopilot, heading, and then I'm going to choose an indicated airspeed of about 65 knots. Now, once I choose an indicated airspeed of 65 knots and it maintains my heading, now I can just control the aircraft, the direction it's flying by the heading bug, and it's just going to maintain 65 all the way up until 9,000, which is the altitude I chose. And we can see that the green line is starting to come in towards the center on our HSI, which means we're coming into the radial that we want to fly at. That's going to be the Victor Airway. And I'm just going to start pulling up the procedure that I want to do into Centennial Airport. Now, it's on the GPS, and typically I'd be leaving tower frequency and contacting Denver departure, but like I said, it's not really very accurate with the communication, so kind of just ignore that part. Alright, already ATC is kind of going off in my ear, and I'm just going to try to ignore it. Okay. So as we get a little bit closer to the radio which I want to fly, I'll turn to that heading just to maintain it. Right now we're still climbing. Please acknowledge. Alright. Acknowledge handoff. Now leave me alone. One thing I don't like about Microsoft Flight Simulator is that they did a great job with the graphics and getting the geographical layout on everything. I mean, I could find my home on this. I could find the tree that was still there before it got chopped down. But the communications and navigation, they kind of dropped the ball on that one, which I can't blame. Not a lot of people know a lot about aviation, so. But here would be in contact with Denver departure. We're in Denver Bravo's airspace, so it's actually very critical that we already established contact. We receive clearance. As I approach the heading, I'm going to just get the plane to turn a little bit. And with this new heading, we should be able to maintain the Victor Airway all the way to the beginning of our approach. And so we've already leveled off on cruise. The autopilot did it by itself. Didn't really have to worry too much about it. And now we just wait. So the fun thing about flying in Denver is that elevation, the winds, the airspace, the complexity of it all can make it really challenging, especially for new pilots. But it's really rewarding once you understand it and are able to navigate around it. And it's a pretty cool city to fly around. I enjoy it. One thing you guys probably can't see is that I'm actually using an iPad to navigate and pull up approach plates. And so I could probably pull this up for you guys, but uh, I'll figure that out another time. I think I have too many monitors already going on. So I don't want to kind of make it too cluttery, but I think hopefully you guys will kind of see what I'm doing and get the gist. So you'll see I'm on the purple line on my GPS. I'm basically aligned on the green line with my radial, and we are on Victor Airway. What is it? I should have it memorized by now. Victor 81, going from Rocky Mountain to Centennial Airport. Now this is usually the time where I would brief an approach plate, especially with my students as I teach them instrument flying. And I like to use a specific checklist to make sure I have everything, which is our wire checklist. Weather, instruments, radios, and everything else. And that kind of sounds a little bit too all-inclusive with the everything else, but you'll kind of see what I mean. So if I want to get the weather at Centennial, I know that all I have to do is tune into the ATIS frequency 120.3. Now typically I would use COM2 for this, but again I'm not really talking to departure, but the weather pops into my ears and I can hear it. Now, typically we'd be looking for ceilings, temperature dew point, making sure we're not in icing conditions, knowing that we have enough altitude between the cloud layer and the ground. But here we can see it's clear skies. We're basically VFR, just on an IFR flight plan, and we're just going to kind of continue as such. So I got my weather. Apparently whiskey's active. Got all the information. You want your winds, your altimeter setting, the runway in use, so you know what uh, runway to anticipate. And so a lot of times ATC will kind of tell you, especially when you're too far out to actually receive the frequency. Um, at least just like get the information, because it's kind of line of sight and it's based off distance. And if you're too far or too low or behind an obstruction, you're not really going to be able to receive that weather. But we got the weather, and then at this point I would just be back with departure 132.75, and using one radio is not ideal, but this is what I can control. And I would also set up um, the radio for tower and ground as well. Now we got the weather. The next one is instruments in our wire checklist. Instruments is just making sure that you have your VOR or ILS, whatever you're using, set up. We're going to be doing an ILS approach, so we do need a VOR receiver with glide slope capabilities. So with that, we can basically follow down on a specific glide slope all the way down to the runway without having to worry about hitting obstacles, getting too low, especially if we can't see anything. I have the worst Wi-Fi that I have absolutely no control over. I'm actually in an apartment, so it's not like I can upgrade to the better Wi-Fi, but maybe I can switch to an Ethernet port, a little bit more stable connection next time. So on the GPS, you can kind of see that we're already passing Centennial Airport, and you kind of see on the left of the screen that's where we're going. If I was VFR, clearly we could just go direct and, land. But what's the fun in that? So even though the GPS shows me a little bit left of the course, I am on the Victor Airway as shown by the green line on my HSI, and I'm still on radial 147. And as long as I'm within, 4 miles of that, that's legal. I'm technically established. We're gonna maintain 9,000 until we get to XB. Once we pass XB, we're actually going to maintain that until the next waypoint, and then we'll start descending down to 8,000 until we capture that glide slope, which is going to lead me down all the way down to the runway without looking outside. Also, another thing to note, I've really kept this full throttle just to keep like max forward speed, but in the real aircraft, you wouldn't be redlining it like I am. You just kind of pull back to a good RPM, and typically in this aircraft, you'd be going anywhere between 90 and 100 knots. I have us going 109 right now. Our ground speed isn't shown. I can actually pop that up. And it says our ground speed, we're actually doing 130 knots. So it looks like we have about uh, 21 knots in tailwind. So the wind up here at altitude is much faster than what was at Rocky Mountain on the surface. And typically that's just because surface winds are going to be slower because of ground friction. As you go higher, the winds are not really they're not really restricted, so they get to go faster. It's kind of like a highway. The more right you are on the highway, the more cars, the slower you're going to go. So it's kind of the same thing. The lower you are in aviation, same thing with aircrafts. It's really interesting. So it looks like we're gonna uh, hit XB in about 7 minutes. So in that time, I can still continue to go through the wire checklist. So my instruments are set up. Pretty much all I have to do is tune into the ILS frequency at Centennial Airport, which is 111.3. I already have that on standby. It kind of popped in automatically when I set up the approach procedure. So in my VOR frequency, we can see that it's already on standby. All I have to do is switch it and I'll be good. But right now I have to be established um, on this radial until I get to XB. Now, typically if you're going to use one VOR, especially for instrument approaches, you're going to want to use two. It's how you triangulate your position. And typically we would know we are over XB by using a second radial, which is Falcon VOR. But I'd kind of have to go in the aircraft and manually put that one in. Do have 5 minutes. So essentially what that looks like is I got one VOR, that's what I'm tracking. That's my green line that we're seeing on the upper left hand corner. On the bottom there's nothing being tracked. And I can just come down here, zoom in a bit. Again, I'm on autopilot, don't really have to pay too much attention to it. But I can put in 16.3. Switch it, and the radial I'm actually going to be looking for based off this approach plate is going to be 197. So all I gotta do is actually turn this to 197. It couldn't go slower. And we're really just gonna ballpark it. So that's about 19, 195, 67. So essentially when these two radials line up in the center, I'm gonna know that I'm at a cross intersection, and with the GPS It's not really going to show you, but that cross intersection happens at ho hum, and you can almost see that that radial exists, but that's just a holding pattern. And typically, yes, that holding pattern is on the 197 radial Falcon. And once we see this, we'll know we're at ho hum. But we really got to get to XB, which is actually further south. So essentially, we'll kind of hit that radial and continue south, kind of like I want to say 170, and then we'll loop back around. Now the GPS is going to want me to do probably something really funky, move direct, do some hot dog maneuver, but I'm just going to kind of do it how I know it, which is a standard procedure turn. You hit the waypoint, you go out 1 minute, you turn into the side that's protected, the protected side, and you'll kind of re-intercept after that 180. You'll kind of add 30 degrees after that 180 turn, so a 210 turn to re-intercept the localizer, and then we'll just kind of maintain our altitude as the approach specifies. Alright, so we can actually kind of go back to a normal view. Clearly we can't see anything outside. Can't even see my aircraft. What is fun to see is kind of like what's down below. This is one of my favorite parts of flying, especially at night. I really love all the lights. It's like Christmas every day. So when you're actually in the airplane, it's actually pretty cool. And we can kind of just look at what Colorado looks like because I can control the aircraft just from the instruments shown on the different corners. And we'll be flying the flight plan shortly. So looks like on the GPS I already kind of passed ho hum. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our heading indicator. We're going to turn to about 170. We're going to re-intercept XB. Right now it wants me to go straight direct on Furpy, but that's not what we're going to do. We're going to maintain 9,000. We're going to go out a little bit. I want to make sure that I do intercept XB. I can go on my flight plan and maybe let's see what I can do. I should be able to. No, I can't activate that leg. It won't let me. So we're just going to go direct to XB real quick. Okay, and then we'll start up the rest of the flight plan. Alright, let's go back. So now it actually has the procedure turn in there, which is nice. I wouldn't say that the west side is the protected side. I would go ahead and guess that the east side was more protected, but at this point, I'll rock with the GPS. At least it's giving me that procedure turn. So we're still maintaining 9,000. It's pitch black. It might as well be IFR. The only thing you can see is the light pollution of Colorado Springs, which is actually pretty cool that Microsoft put this in. Uh, a million stars in the sky. Not that you would be able to see it because again, the light pollution of Denver is just so great. I mean, you could see this easily 50 miles out, and most big cities you can. So I would love to see the stars flying like this. You can actually see the Milky Way. I think that's pretty cool. So it looks like we're approaching XB. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make that right hand turn as it suggests, and we're going to go ahead and turn to first the course of 350. That is the final approach course. That it's the direction of the runway that we're going to be landing on. But then once we do that, we're gonna switch over to the ILS, capture it, and the course for that really should be on 350. Now, typically, um, it doesn't care. There's a distinction between my HSI and the VOR inside the aircraft. It's going to line up no matter what because it's a fixed radial. But now that we've lined up, and it looks like we're actually already established on the radial, I think that was a really tight turn. Benefits of a small and slow aircraft. So we're on the localizer. You can see that my HSI does say lock 1. That stands for localizer. And we're going to have to account for some wind. We're getting some pretty good winds from the northwest. That's going to be pushing us away. And the way I'm going to account for that is I'm just going to be using this kind of like magenta diamond that's kind of at the top of my green arrow, and that's actually showing me wind correction. So to account for the wind pushing me to the right and actually slowing me down, I got about a left quartering headwind. So I'm going to move a little bit left and account for that, and that's just going to keep me on course. We're going to maintain 9,000 until the next waypoint, and then after that we're going to descend down to 8,000, and I can do that with autopilot. It's not really something we do in real life. Uh, we kind of hand fly this, especially from the final approach fix. But for now, for the sake of ease, it's just a lot easier to fly it on autopilot. So Furpy's coming up. After Furpy, we go to J-Dog. Sometimes I love how they name these things. If you actually fly into Orlando, uh, they got a whole bunch of Disney characters um, for each waypoint. All right, looks like we're coming off the localizer slightly to the left. Now we want to be really accurate on approaches like this. When you're navigating and it's slightly off, that's fine as long as you're 4 miles within the Victor airway. You're basically established. But when you're trying to land on a runway that's only about uh, 100 feet wide, you really want to be accurate. You want to get that center line, and you don't want to leave too much room for error because 4 miles off the runway doesn't really help you to land. All right, so we cross Furpy. What we're gonna do is we're gonna pull our power. I'm gonna select an altitude of 8,000, and then I'm gonna select an airspeed of about 90 knots. I really want to keep 90 knots on the approach. It's typical approach speed. Keeps your best forward speed, keeps traffic around you from kind of catching up to you. We're going to keep our heading just a little bit to the left because it looks like we're coming now to the right, of course. And we could already see Centennial out in the distance, but if we're instrument, this would be a lot more difficult because you really have to rely on your instruments. There's no way to see the airport and say, "Oh, I'm off," especially in the clouds. So we're coming back on the localizer. It's going to get more and more sensitive the closer we get to it. Um, so we really want to be cognizant of that. Now, this allows us to come straight down to 8,000 without having to really account for the glide slope. But after this waypoint, we really want to stick to um, the glide slope, and we want to be very particular. So once we get to the next waypoint, which is J-Dog, we're going to be there in about a minute and a half. That's when I'm going to actually just kick off autopilot and I'm going to hand fly it. But set yourself up for success. The winds are not going to be pushing us off to the right as much, so my wind correction is going to have to come out and maybe slightly to the right so I can re-intercept that localizer. The glide slope is coming in, I can tell because it's a green diamond that's both on my PFD and HSI. So no matter what instrument I'm looking at, I can actually see the glide slope starting to come in. It's on the top of the scale, so it means I'm below it. And really where I want it is the middle. And if it gets too low, it means I'm above it. So we really want to make sure that that glide slope is like stuck right in the middle, just like we're trying to do with our localizer by adding that wind correction. Alright, coming on to JDog, I just reactivated on the GPS, but we're still flying via ILS. That's the approach system we're using. So let's get it. Alright, so here we are, JDog. I'm at 8,000. I really should be intercepting the glide slope at this point. My final approach course is 350, and at this point, the glide slope should be very much in the middle. Now, I'm not going to blame Microsoft Flight Simulator, but we're going to maintain 8,000 until we actually have that glide slope established. Now, what I'm going to do once that's established and I want to start a descent, um, I'm gonna reduce my power, and I may not be doing 90 knots or 100 knots. It's gonna get a little bit slower, but that's okay because really the point of instrument flying is to get there safe, not get there fast. So I'm gonna set my power to about 1800 RPMs. I'm gonna put 10 degrees flaps, and this is gonna get a lot more sensitive as I fly. So we can already see that my airspeed's coming down. That's fine. I really do want to be below um, 85 knots when I'm landing, but for now we can kind of keep that a little bit higher. So I'm going to increase my power. Now if I get too low, power is what you want, and right now I don't know if how high I am above the ground. All I know is I got to be on that glide slope, and my localizer has to be lined up so I'm on that center line. And like I said, with the localizer, it's going to get more sensitive as I get there. The same is true for the glide slope. So I really want to be very diligent uh, with these movements. I don't want to make too large of movements because then I'm going to go way off. So trying to look at the headings you're at, what's working, what's not working. If the green kind of goes down, I want to bring that nose down. If the green stabilizes, that's the angle I want, but it's still kind of getting away from us. So right now I'm not going to be focusing outside on the screen. I'm going to be focusing on my two instruments, uh, my PFD, my HSI, and I can see that my glide slope is really getting away from me. So a good way to do it is just reduce your power. It's going to slow you down. Gives you a little bit more time before you get to the runway. Allows you to descend a lot more quickly. 1,000 feet per minute is not something I want to descend at, and this is typically a lot easier in the actual aircraft. You got that real feel, you know your corrections, you can feel the winds, you can feel your sinks. And so now that I have my glide slope, I'm actually going to kind of pull back, slow it down, because I'm basically at minimums now. My localizers kind of got away from me. I'm not full deflection, so I don't need to go around. I just got to be a little bit more aware of my glide slope. So our minimum we're going down to is 6,000. At 6,000, typically we break out of the clouds. That's the lowest altitude that we're allowed to be at when breaking out of the clouds. And you can see my movements are getting a little bit more sporadic, but that's okay because it's a video game. I wouldn't be so sporadic in real life because again, you could kind of really feel it out. My glide slope is still somewhat in the center. My localizer is still somewhat center. Here's 6,000, that's my minimums. You can see the runway. And at that point, I'm just going to bring my power all the way down. I want to get below 85 because that's when I can put in a second degree of flaps. We're going to go inside the cockpit just so I have a better visual of where I'm at. And at this point, I could put 30. I don't have to. I'm already landing. So here we are, wheels down. And I don't have any rudder control, so I'm going to basically go off the runway. If I had rudder control, it's a lot easier to keep center line, and I think I'm going to invest in that fairly soon. But I'm on the ground, I'm on the runway, my airspeed is um, basically dead at this point, and now I can kind of pick up my flaps. I'm just going to keep control on my rudders, and at this point, I'm not going to bother taking a taxiway. I have opposite traffic from me. I have no idea if this is, a computer or if this is somebody else flying. Um, just kind of let it happen because, well, we're in a simulation. I could take this taxiway that's to my right. Whoop, too much rudder control. Um, and essentially now I'm off the runway. If this guy wants to land, he can land. I have no way to control my rudders, so I'm actually doing it with buttons and knobs. And here we go. We got ambulances and cars on the taxiway, just running into everybody. Just gonna set my parking brake. We're gonna come to a full stop. But yeah, so that's basically just a simple instrument flight where we depart, we intercept a Victor airway, we fly to a point that's going to allow us to start a instrument approach procedure, and we fly it all the way in. Used a lot of autopilot. I wish I could hand fly this thing. It's a little bit too sensitive, um, but for the most part, the basics are there. And if you guys have any questions, I am a flight instructor. I can answer anything. And even though I'm not the best pilot in Microsoft Flight Simulator, uh, I'll tell you, flying is so easy and much easier than this. Cool. Well, that was more or less of an hour. I know my connection's not great. I know the latency is really bad. I think next time I hop on, I'll have an Ethernet cable, but I'll try and do this daily around 7 o'clock uh, or 8 o'clock local time, 7 o'clock central time. And yeah, we'll just do a different flight. Typically, I'm going to be flying out of Colorado, and that's just kind of where I'm based at. It's something I'm used to, but I've flown everywhere: New York, Florida, Arizona, and I have a pretty good idea of where everything is. And with my trusty iPad that I'll probably have, so you guys can see, um, you guys will be able to follow along exactly where I am. And if you guys actually do want to track me, you can actually track me on what is it? Flight events. I think you can track anybody on flight events, and it's pretty cool. It just spoofs my location on the iPad, so I'm just seeing myself move as if I'm actually in the air. But yeah, we made it to Centennial. I didn't care to contact ground because I don't care to talk to anyone on Microsoft Flight Simulator. But yeah, typical easy flight. I think if you were my instrument student at Rocky Mountain Metro and we had to do an instrument flight, this would be a really good introductory flight. Typically, I like to do more cross countries, go a little bit further, maybe Pueblo, and I could probably do that next flight where we go from Rocky Mountain to Pueblo Municipal. And that's a little bit more fun because uh, for students, typically, it's going to be a real cross country. That's what we do. But it has a nice DME arc, which it's not the easiest to explain, but essentially it's like an approach, but with a full 180 degree curve all the way to the final approach segment, and it's got you gotta work it out a little bit, I can go over that when I do fly, but yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed some of this. I know I kept kind of falling off the stream on the stream. I don't think I lasted more than 20 minutes before my internet died. But next time we'll try and get that working. Um, I love all the traffic that's just on this taxiway. This is not something that would actually happen, but Microsoft Flight Simulator doesn't know better, so they're just saying, "Oh yeah, let's just get a bunch of uh, emergency vehicles going around." And sometimes there's a bus, sometimes there's a car. Thank God they just go right through me. Cool. Well, I hope some of you guys learned something off that. Again, if you have questions, just chat me. We also have an IG. If you guys just look on Instagram, it's flyhigh.denver. That's just me being able to teach you guys via platform for free so that you guys can learn aviation knowledge and skills right from home, where you don't have to spend, $200 an hour or more trying to figure this out. But I am also happy to teach you guys one-on-one. If you actually go to our website, fly-high.co, um, you guys can actually book me for a really low price, lower than any instructor can offer, and you guys can join our study sessions also. Sessions are free if you're a member, which is only about $19 a month. But you guys can hop in and ask any questions you want. Here, I'm just kind of doing some fun flights, and if you guys actually have any recommendations, just DM us on Instagram or email us at info@fly-high.co, and we're happy to do any flight you guys are curious about. We'll fly over your house, we'll fly around your airports, typically inside the United States, because that's what I'm used to. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. So I'll try to hop on every day, 8 p.m. Mountain Time, and hopefully I'll see you guys next time.